I posed a question to our other priests, and the question was, can we pinpoint or identify an actual word or action which would prove that the Supreme Pontiff has caused a schism in the mystical body of Christ? Now, in order to answer this question, and this is why it was a little activity given to the priests, is we have to employ the first principles of theology, and that is define your terms. So in defining the terms, we'll start with the last one, the mystical body of Christ. The mystical body of Christ is the resurrected body of Jesus Christ, the natural body of Jesus Christ resurrected. And the mystical body of Christ and the Catholic Church are identical. Schism is the act of separating oneself from the mystical body of Christ. But that separation has to come from some authority, either perceived or real. The Supreme Pontiff is, here on earth, is defined as the Vicar of Christ, the supreme bridge builder between man and God. And those words and actions would be a statement or an action that would point directly to this kind of schism against the mystical body of Christ. And the answer to this is yes, we can. The Second Vatican Council, when it declared that the Catholic Church is no longer to be understood as identical to the mystical body of Christ, but it is now to be understood that the Catholic Church subsists within the mystical body of Christ, at that moment they laid the foundation for schism, but it didn't happen yet. Why? Because a council cannot declare a schismatic action against the mystical body. Only a Supreme Pontiff can. Also, John the 23rd, by calling the Second Vatican Council, did not create a schismatic act. To call a council is not a schismatic act. For a council to give counsel is not a schismatic act. The schismatic act comes when the one that is thought to have the supreme authority now teaches what may be a council or what another Supreme Pontiff opened the way for. And so with the words of the Second Vatican Council declaring that the Catholic Church is no longer to be understood as identical, but now subsisting, and that means like the heart subsists within the body, but there are other parts of the body. And also in Lumen Gentium, it ends by saying that when all religions and all faiths come together, we will then be able to see visibly the mystical body of Christ. These were all heresies. These were blasphemies. This is obvious, but not yet schism. So it was when when Paul VI, being thought to be the Supreme Pontiff, promulgates the Second Vatican Council, that it became absolutely, without any doubt, became known that they had gone into schism against the mystical body of Christ. Now, Paul VI was not the Supreme Pontiff. But remember, the mystical body of Christ cannot be divided. You can only divide from it. You can only leave it. You can only take a group away from it. So what we speak of in schism is that he is the man thought to be the leader who now called the men out of the mystical body. Those men being brought out of the mystical body have been destroyed by that. The mystical body has not been destroyed. The mystical body of Christ is still as pure, still as pristine, still as true and as good as it has always been. It still exists. It is here amongst men. But this schism that has taken place against it and its resulting destruction of souls is what we are fighting against, to convince those souls to return back into the mystical body of Christ. So, yes, we can pinpoint the exact words and the exact actions when these men went into schism against the mystical body of Christ.